Obviously, we are heartbroken for the victims of the stabbings this past weekend. And we know this is an isolated, exceedingly rare incident, and the suspect is now in custody.
Denver's mayor is trying to calm nerves in his city after a suspect attacks multiple people, killing two at random. That's according to police. The suspect has a lengthy criminal history that we will show you and you are going to want to see. What a scary story taking place in Denver, Colorado over the weekend. This stabbing spree happening in the heart of downtown. Full disclosure, I lived there for 4 years. I absolutely love Denver. It's an incredibly welcoming place, but this story of a suspect stabbing poor people at random, four people, in a place called the 16th Street Mall, where there are a lot of restaurants, a lot of businesses, and a lot of hotels, which is why a lot of the people who spend time in that part of Denver typically are from out of town. At the same time, it's a place that has gained a reputation as a spot, as you may see someone who's going through a mental health crisis. And the city's been trying to change that narrative about the 16th Street Mall. It's been under construction. They've been trying to revitalize it, especially since the pandemic. But this story certainly hurts efforts to change the narrative about this part of Denver. Let me run through what we know at this point from police and where things are expected to go from here. It all started last Saturday night, downtown Denver. Police say that a man by the name of Elijah Caudill, here's his mugshot on the screen, that he took a large knife and he randomly attacked four people. Two of them lost their lives, and that includes this woman, 71-year-old Celinda Levenu. She was a long-time flight attendant who was just exploring the city while she was on a layover. She was visiting from Phoenix. Now, this is a picture of her provided by the Association of Professional Flight Attendants, who say that she started her career all the way back in 1989. She loved horses and music. There's a GoFundMe right now that's raised thousands of dollars for her funeral expenses. The other person killed, we just learned, was 34-year-old Nicholas Burkett. His family has posted a GoFundMe with this picture of him from his childhood. His family told local TV station KMGH that he was unhoused, that he had struggles with drug abuse. But his sister says that he's also someone who taught her to live life without caring what others may think. The two people who were injured, the first victim, someone who was slashed in the face, they were able to take themselves to the hospital on their own. But then police say another man was stabbed. This was someone who was stabbed in the torso. Here's the alert that Denver police posted on social media Saturday night. I actually had a few friends send it to me because it was something that was so alarming. The spree started at 5:10 p.m. The first victim who survived, that person who was slashed to the face. Then it was just about 10 minutes later that police say the suspect attacked Levno, the flight attendant, who would lose her life. Then about a half hour after that, at 5:54, police say a third victim, an adult male, was stabbed in the torso. And at this point, police put that alert out on social media with the picture of the suspect. It would be another 24 hours until they would arrest the guy. Police say that officers took him into custody after around 8 o'clock on Sunday, seeing someone who matched the description, and they had a large knife downtown. After the arrest, they would come across the fourth victim, and that was Nicholas Burkett, who was slashed in the back, and he was pronounced dead. Now, the suspect is the man that you see right here, 24-year-old Elijah Caudill. This is a picture from his first court appearance. This is courtesy of the local CBS station in Colorado. He's being held on 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. And this attack appears to be far from Caudill's first interaction with the legal system. According to the Denver Post, court records show that he's been arrested multiple times in the past 5 years. Most recently, he was released from jail in November 2024 after serving 11 months. That stemmed from a case where police say he inappropriately touched a woman at a detox facility in Denver. The records we reviewed showed that he was released in November to a state-run program that's called Bridges. And it's called Bridges because it's supposed to act like a bridge between the criminal justice system and the mental health care resources that are available for people who are incarcerated who can get help. Now, Caudill's grandparents spoke to the CBS station in Colorado and said that he struggled with what they considered undiagnosed mental health conditions, and they also say he struggled with substance use. The Denver mayor held a news conference trying to calm fears, saying that this was an isolated incident, it was a rare incident, said that the city has seen a major drop in the murder rate over the past year. At this point, it's unclear what the motive is for these attacks. And certainly there are serious questions that are being raised right now about the criminal justice system in Denver because of what we saw take place on the 16th Street Mall last weekend. Joining me now from Colorado is former prosecutor and current criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis. Eric, thanks for taking the time to be here. I know this story has gained so much attention where you live in Denver. You look at the background, the criminal background of this suspect, and it goes back years, but even within the last year, he goes to jail for allegedly groping a woman at a detox facility. Then while he is in jail in 2024, he's accused of attacking other inmates, and yet he's released in November of last year. I think the straightforward question that so many people have as they've read this story is why was he out and freely walking the streets of Denver?
Sure, completely fair question. It's a question many in Denver have asked, many around the country have asked. I think there are a number of reasons why that is. One is that he's 24 years old, so he doesn't have, decades of criminal history. His criminal history stems back to approximately 2019, as far as I'm aware. On top of that, he has prior charges, including a prior charge with a knife. But what it looks like is that most of his background in terms of convictions are misdemeanors. They're not felony matters. The news has talked to this gentleman's parents, grandparents, and learned about prior mental health issues and things of that sort. It looks like most recently he was released into what's called a Bridges program, which is a rather new program in Colorado designed to help folks with mental health issues who are also in the criminal justice system. It looks like he failed to appear for his court date, did not cooperate with any of those requirements, and then lo and behold, that this horrible tragedy happens in January.
Yeah, let's talk about the Bridges program a little bit, because being on the outside of the legal community, you look at his record, and there was prior to the 2024 incarceration times he didn't show up for probation, didn't show up for court appearances related to some other cases. And then you have the situations where he's attacking inmates allegedly while he's incarcerated. How does it get to the point where someone in the criminal justice system says, this is someone that would be a great candidate for our program to be out and not be behind bars?
I think there is a trend in the criminal justice system to look towards the causes of certain criminality. And some of those causes do rest within the mental health field. And so I think some folks are trying to identify, hey, who can best be served by mental health services in hopes of not repeating this criminal behavior later on. I think that is part of why they looked at Elijah Caudill for the Bridges program. Now, that program is imperfect. It requires trust in the defendant that they're going to cooperate with what is required of them. He was supposed, my understanding anyway, is he was supposed to go into mental health services, possibly even like an inpatient setting with a bed. And it appears, as far as I can tell, that he did not comply with those requirements. He kind of went off on his own, failed to appear for court. He was sort of just meandering on the streets, and all of these things came to a head. So I think it was well-intentioned, but certainly poorly executed.
A lot of criticism right now for the criminal justice system that it just continued to give opportunities to Elijah Caudill, where 2021, just outside Denver, he was accused of threatening a property manager with a knife. You continue to hear these stories. Just as someone who's been a prosecutor and a defense attorney, did the it's easy in hindsight to say that the criminal justice system should have been harder on him, but even when you look step by step, were there mistakes made?
I think there surely were mistakes made. I think that there ought to have been earlier intervention with mental health services, and if it was shown that that wasn't working over time, that he was repeating his conduct, surely a more heavy-handed criminal justice measure could have been imposed. For example, there are bonds that a person charged with a crime has. In this case, it looks like he was let out on what's called a personal recognizance bond, which really means he doesn't have to put up any cash, and there's really nothing hanging over his head if he fails to appear, except that a warrant would be issued. And so certainly there are arguments that there should have been more incarceration for his prior criminality and more sort of containment measures put in place as that criminality was escalating, which it appears to have done in 2023 and 2024.
Take us inside that bond process of how it gets to the point where this person who's accused of some serious, they weren't felonies, but still, when you read the police reports, I mean, it's stuff that as a regular citizen, you wouldn't want to come in contact with. Who ultimately makes the decision that personal recognizance is what Elijah Caudill gets in the cases that he's facing?
Totally, Chris. So how that process works is a judge makes the final call as to whether a bond should be imposed and what that bond should be and what the conditions of that bond are going to be. The prosecutor takes a position, the defense attorney takes a position, the judge weighs all of the considerations and makes a final call. Here, there are additional measures that could have been put in place. There are GPS units. There are requirements that a person goes from incarceration directly into like an inpatient program or something like that as a condition of the bond. As far as I can tell, that was not the case. And just to be clear, although the prior convictions are misdemeanors, he has been charged with felony conduct in the past.
Yeah, and I remember the news conference the night that he was arrested, where you have the mayor, you have the chief of police in downtown Denver, and there was a line from the police chief where he said that he doesn't have a violent past. And then I keep thinking back to that 2021 case where he threatens a property manager in Adams County with a knife. And then you have these cases where he's attacking inmates while he's incarcerated. In terms from a legal, and I understand law enforcement comes in touch with the bar of what potentially is a violent criminal is maybe different than what the regular person may consider. But what is typically the bar in the criminal justice system to say this is a person who is a violent offender and has a violent past?
Yeah, with respect to that comment, at best, it was a misstatement. At worst, it was misleading the public. It's just not accurate that this person doesn't have a violent past. In addition to the allegations you mentioned, there was an allegation that he sexually groped a woman working in a detox facility who was trying to help him.
Right.
And so we got to make sure we are approaching these things realistically. It's wonderful to have this sense of, oh, we want to help everybody and we want to get to the root causes of this behavior. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. But we also got to make clear that 16th Street Mall in Denver is not a safe place right now. And a terribly unsafe act happened at this gentleman's hands, allegedly. And when it comes to the bar in terms of deciding who's a violent criminal, there's no like legal standard. It's just kind of somebody eyeballing it and saying, hey, I think this guy has a violent past, or no, I don't, regardless of what the factual scenario might be.
And for some context, I was saying in the lead-in, I was talking about the 16th Street Mall where, there are restaurants there, businesses, hotels. I wouldn't say the locals hang out at the 16th Street Mall too much, but for people who haven't been there, because it has a reputation, especially post-pandemic, I would say, where, I've seen people who have been in mental health crisis on the 16th Street Mall. I don't know if I necessarily ever felt unsafe, but in your experience, how would you describe the 16th Street Mall to someone who's taking in this story?
Chris, I have lived in Colorado and in Denver all of my life, and there has been a pretty drastic transformation in downtown. So 16th Street Mall used to be kind of this thriving, burgeoning commercial area. There were, like you said, restaurants and stores. There's even a shuttle that can take a person from the one side of the street to the other. But since then, there have been some real dangerous elements that have imposed themselves on that area. Now the police have responded. They have put cameras in that area. There are cameras on the 16th Street Mall. There are what are called halo cameras surrounding that area. On top of that, they said that they have increased patrols, although I've never seen like police officers really having a strong presence down there. And so presently, it's a pretty darn unsafe place. It is plagued with folks experiencing houselessness, folks experiencing substance abuse issues, and those things rise to the level of criminal acts and to violent acts far too frequently.
And I know my next question is one that everybody's trying to figure out, because when you hear the term criminal justice reform, it sounds great. And there are stories of people who were incarcerated and go on to live great lives. But then you do have stories like the ones we're talking about here, where it's this lengthy criminal record and it ends in an absolute tragedy. You've been on both sides, criminal defense and prosecution. And you look at a program like Bridges, where there are going to be a lot of questions for months and years to come about that program. How do we handle mental health care in the criminal justice system so it doesn't get to this point?
I think that one change that could be considered is sort of a tough but fair approach. So yes, like I said, we want to look into the antecedent influences of criminal behavior, like mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and address those. But we can't be so soft on the matter that we are just having this revolving door at the jail where a person gets charged with something, goes in, they spend a little bit of time, they come out, do something again, and it just repeats forever. That's not sustainable. That's not going to work. And so I think that when we're talking especially about the bond issue, to have strict conditions, if you're going to let this person back into the community, perhaps they are escorted from the jail to an inpatient facility by law enforcement. Perhaps there is some sort of law enforcement or security presence at the facility that prevents them from leaving. Look, I want to address these folks' issues in a way that makes them not recur, but we also can't be exposing the public to dangerous elements unnecessarily when there are alternatives that exist.
And the mayor has said this is an isolated incident. He's touting that some of the statistics show like the murder rate is down in Denver. And I just want to preface my next question saying that because you look at, there have been stories like this in the past in other states where it's this person that's been arrested multiple times and you say, how did it get to this point? In your experience, how common is it for there to be people who are out and about that have these lengthy rap sheets? Is that just something when we see it in the public, we're like, how does this happen? But in the world of criminal defense and the criminal justice system, how many people have these types of backgrounds that may be out and about and the criminal justice system is not being as hard on them as they should be?
It happens a lot more frequently than one would think. And let me be clear, some of those folks deserve to be out. They've spent their time and some of them have been reformed, and that's great. But for other folks, I remember when I was a prosecutor and I was looking at a guy's rap sheet, and there are like 30 entries on that rap sheet, and there are like 5 convictions. And I'm like, what in the world happened to the other 25 cases? And either those matters are pled down or they are dismissed, sometimes appropriately, sometimes not appropriately. And so I think that, recognizing these patterns and seeing these repeat offenders, we've got to distinguish between those folks who deserve the chance that they have to be out and who have earned it, and those folks who haven't and who present an unnecessary risk to society.
Yeah, and this is certainly in this case, it's such a tragic story. We'll see how the case plays out moving forward. Criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis, thanks for taking the time.
Always a pleasure.
Again, there are serious charges that Caudill is facing, and there are serious questions for the criminal justice system in Colorado. Leave in the comments your thoughts on this case and how it could play out. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. For Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. Thanks for watching.